Okay. Hey guys, I am sitting here with one of my dearest friends. This is Christa Babb, and I hope you all have friends like Christa. She's, first of all, going to probably get bummed out when I say this because I've told her this, but I think I live in Evergreen, Colorado, and I tell her that if there was a Mrs. Evergreen, I would so nominate her. She's that person who's working behind the scenes to show God's love to people all the time. It's just who she is and what she does. And we've been friends for a long time. We have kids, girl, boy, all the same age, that whole thing. So it's just been so fun to be able to go through life with Christa. We moved into their house when ours was under construction. I mean, it's that kind of relationship. And I got a call on December 27th that they were in Hawaii, which we had just been together with them right before they left. They were in Hawaii and they had all been playing out in the waves, and a wave came along and hit their son in such a way that it broke his neck. And at the time we didn't know the extent of what had happened, but it was a complete break, which means, well, Christa can probably, what's a complete?
Complete break means that he'll never get feeling or function below his level of injury.
Yeah, so complete does, there's incomplete, which as the medical world would say, there's more hope in it, but on a complete fracture, it doesn't have a real promising future. And I literally was nauseous, crying, of course, so sad, because Tommy was kind of like a son to me. I mean, he's such a great guy, and he is 4 days apart from my son. That's how close they are. So when the news came in, we did a prayer night, which really, it was crazy. At this prayer night, I was shaking physically all over. I told you this story. I was physically shaking. One, I was just in shock that 400 people showed up with an hour notice to come and pray. And I was kind of physically shaking. And as I stepped back, I felt this unbelievable knowledge and peace that God was at work and using this for good. I physically stopped shaking, I was smiling, and I was like, God, you are here. I just knew that he was working miracles. And so, anyway, it's been quite a journey, but Christa, tell us, where's Tommy at now? What's going on in Tommy's life since December 27th?
Well, Tommy's come a long way since December 27th. At first, he had absolutely no feeling or function at all. He was on a respirator, ventilator, in which he finally was weaned off at about 6 weeks. So the doctors originally told us that Tommy would not ever breathe on his own, probably. His injury is a C4 complete, which means he may get some feeling and function in his biceps and his shoulders. But at the moment of injury, he had nothing, absolutely nothing. And in fact, he didn't even have a voice, which was probably the hardest part at that time because we couldn't talk to him and he couldn't express his feelings to us, and I couldn't imagine what was going on inside of his mind at that time. So initially it was a gloom and doom. Did you ask me what's going on now?
Yeah.
And in this day, so much has changed, and Tommy's always maintained an amazing attitude, and he's just a real fighter. He's the most resilient person I know. So today Tommy is able actually to move his biceps and his shoulders, gaining a lot of strength in those areas. The other day we actually he was able to feed himself, which was incredibly exciting and shows a lot of hope for further function. So he has no use of his arms or his hands or his wrists, which is a big deal. We use those all the time, obviously. So he is unable to do a lot of things and is completely dependent on others at this point. But emotionally, he is doing amazing. He has been, like I said, since the beginning. And socially, he hasn't missed a beat. So he has come a long way from lying still in a hospital bed without a voice. And he's heading on to college, actually, later on next week. He's going back to college. He'll be a sophomore at the University of Kansas, which when he was first injured, we never thought that was going to come to fruition. But it is. His dream's coming true. So.
Yeah, Tommy's been amazing. The whole family's been amazing, and they have been just a shining light in our community in Evergreen. So many people are drawn to their story because it goes against what the natural response is. Tell me, I remember when Tommy was in the hospital and he didn't have a voice, he could look at a reading chart and he could spell, or not a reading chart, a letter chart, and he could spell things out. What was the first thing? Do you remember what he said?
You have to remind me, but he said, this is a beginning.
something like this is the beginning of a new chapter or something.
Yeah, something like that. He wanted to spell something out, and we all got very nervous, like what in the world is he going to want to spell? But he with his eyes, he was able to pick out letters in a board, which took probably about 15 or 20 minutes to get this phrase out from that way of communicating. But he said something like, "This is the beginning of my new life," and in a very hopeful way, he said that, and we were all like so excited to hear that come from him, and to know that he had that kind of attitude at that point.
Yeah, just imagine that you're 19 years old, you're laying there, you have a ventilator in, you can't move. What would you be thinking? And here he thinks, I'm ready for this new chapter. And what was also really was cool was just how your whole family responded. How did you guys choose to move this way? Like, what do you think it was that got you to be able to continue?
Well, we had two choices, and that was either to fall apart or to bond together and to move forward. And we decided that we really wanted to do what we could to make Tommy's life the fullest it could be. And so we decided that we were going to stick together, bond together as a family, and play the role that we felt God led us to play, each of us individually, and just to be stronger as a family instead of fall apart, and to work on making Tommy's life the best it could be. And at that point, we felt, at that moment when we made that decision, which was probably just a few days into his injury, there was this joy and this peace, as Michelle was describing too, that came over all of us, even Tommy, at that point, that it was so energizing and so exciting in such a horrible, horrible time that it just energized us. And I really think we've done a really good job of, like I said, finding each of our roles that we play best in his life, and just going forward. And we've had glitches for sure, as everyone does, but we've really stayed true to that, and it's been amazing.
We did an event here in Evergreen, and we sent out some invitations, and we had to close the doors at 300 people. Everybody wanted to come because they, again, were so drawn to their story. And it was cool because the whole family wanted to use this first and foremost as a way to share Jesus with those who didn't know him. And their daughter, Claire, who's 22, who I've shared her blog before, I couldn't believe the courage. I mean, my shirt right now says, be strong and courageous. Talk about needing strength and courage. Listen to what Claire, if you can share with us, what Claire did at the event that we did.
Well, first of all, Claire has pretty much been the rock since the moment of Tommy's injury. Even at the moment of injury of his accident, she was comforting all of us, and she was the one who got all the logistics figured out, and she's just been this strong person since the moment it happened. But at the event, she felt God was leading her to tell others about Jesus, and so she used the event as an opportunity to share the love of Jesus, and basically call people to accept Christ at the event. And so she talked about how God has worked in our lives and provided us with amazing joy and peace, and how he's played parts in all of this, and how we've seen him at work, his hand in this from the beginning. And then she invited people to accept Christ at the end. So she felt led to do that, and she felt good about that. And it was a neat venue to present.
And from what I understand, quite a few people raised their hand at that event and said, yeah, I want to know more. I want to know more about this God who has helped your family so much through these challenges. It was it's been beautiful. And, so often we hear the thing, how could a God allow bad things to happen? And I can remember specifically talking to several different people after this had happened to the Babs, and one person said something, and here's what they said. They said, you know what? If something like this happened to my son, I would really doubt if there's a God. And I thought to myself, it's okay that bad things happen to other people, and there can still be a God, but when it happens to us, we're going to question whether or not that's a God. And the whole question is, what's bad? Really, right? Would we write a storybook that included our son becoming a quadriplegic? No. But can you tell us just about maybe one or two of the stories of people who have been touched through this?
Yeah, we've actually heard a lot of stories from day one about how this experience has led people to Christ. It has people have prayed for the first time. People have started searching for faith, and in their faith, and drawn deeper, closer to God. I just got an email this morning from a lady who just had a double mastectomy and said that she is so helpless and really understands where Tommy's at. But she said, I'm so encouraged and inspired by Tommy's story that I am feeling a complete hope and peace that I don't think I could have felt otherwise. I got a text from one of my friends who said, I prayed to God for the first time today. I'm going to cry. He said, I'm not sure he knows who I am, but I'm going to keep praying. So I encouraged him and reminded him that, of course, God knows who he is, and he's just so excited to hear his voice and his prayers. So we've heard a lot of amazing stories from people, and we've been encouraged by others as well, the same way.
Yeah, guys, it's so hard because we think, why would this happen to the Babs? They're doing everything, they're living the way God wants them to live, their children, everything. Could it be that God has actually trusted them with something like this? God is looking at this aerial view of the world, and we can't see that. And he looks down and sees how things can play out. And he sees Tommy living life maybe without the wheelchair and how his life looks. And then he sees him in the wheelchair, and his picture is more about how are we best going to be able to give God glory. And the way that this is kind of playing out, it's just been amazing. I was given just this amazing blessing of being asked to manage their the Facebook page that Tommy's cousin had started. It was called Prayers for Tom Bad. And so I would see all these emails coming in. Guys, miracles happening because of what they're going through. There's a person who's staying in the room next to them in Hawaii. So this is where it happened. They were in Hawaii for a month. And the person next to him goes back to their hometown in the Chicago area, is talking to a neighbor who ends up saying, I know the person who was next to you. We played sports together, connects that person to their Facebook page, and she writes in, I think I really need to look more into what I believe about truth and about Jesus. And she's now like in a whole different place.
Yeah, it's really exciting. The one thing you alluded to about Tommy's injury, I think that God cares a lot less about our physical being than we think that we care about, and that God is really more concerned about our hearts and Tommy's heart. And this physical issue that he's dealing with is awful, and of course, as Michelle said, you'd never wish it on anyone, especially your child. But where I see things happening are in Tommy's heart, and it's affecting other people's hearts. And I think that I really become really aware that our physical bodies are important, and I know Michelle tells us that all the time, and then they are. We need to take care of them, but our hearts are what really matter, and that's what God's really concerned about.
Yeah, I know. Christa and I we can relate in some ways because you guys know about what I went through with my son and how hard it was to see him more spiritually sad, emotionally sad that he would take pills, and then for her to see her son so physically hurt. But we both have been able to get to the other side of it and say, truly, God is good. We both in some ways have had to sacrifice a little bit of our sons for more people to come to know Jesus. But I thought to myself, God, that's what God did. He sent his son so that his son, through the pain and suffering and his death, more people would come to know about him. And we want to try to avoid pain. We want to avoid pain for our kids. We want to come in and save them. And sometimes pain can be the best thing to bring them closer to Jesus, to bring others closer to Jesus. And I just want to I'll say one more thing and then I'll ask Christa if she has anything else to share. But there's a story that they told me that it's probably one of the more moving things I've ever heard in my life. And what happened was there was a lady who said 20-some years ago, she had prayed for a friend who was sick, and that friend died. She prayed for a grandma who was sick, and the grandma died. And time, she prayed. Even one time when her friend was in a coma, she sat by that bed praying, and the friend died. And she said, I gave up on God, because God obviously didn't hear me or care about me. And then she heard about the Babs story and how during this trial and challenge, they were drawing closer to him. And she said, I had been expecting God to always answer the prayers the way I wanted them. God, you better listen to me and not do things your way. And she said, since this, Christa, I've started to pray again. You don't know me that well, but I've started to pray again. And I now have not missed a day of prayer, and I've come back. to God. And she was wanting to share this with the Babs. I wasn't quite sure what that looked like, but she was sleeping, and while she was sleeping, she had a dream, and she got up in her dream, and there was like a big drafting table in the room. And she went to walk up to the drafting table, and she could see that she was looking over God's shoulder, but she couldn't see God, but she could look at this table. And there was a picture of Tommy, and it was a picture of when he was in the hospital with tubes coming out of everything, and I mean, just looked so sad. Anyway, coming off of Tommy's beds were all these little lines, she said. And at the bottom of one of the lines was written her name. And she was one of the miracles. And there are so many more that were coming off of Tommy's bed because of what he went through. All these people that were going to come to know Jesus. And that story, I think it's probably one of the first times I've said it without crying. Probably because I've already cried today. But anyway, it's just, God is good, and He is doing miracles. And through our challenges, He can be just doing some great thing. You just need to stick close to Him. So, anything else, Chris?
Yeah, something that just came to mind that I read recently was that God uses things He hates to accomplish things He loves. So if we can just trust Him and believe that, and I do believe that the little trials we go through and the big trials we go through in life, know that God is at work as long as we love Him.
Yeah, awesome. That's beautiful. I mean, I've never heard that. And this is Benson, her dog. But guys, thanks so much. And I would just encourage you to go look at the Facebook Prayers for Tom Babb. And what's Claire's blog?
Light of Unfailing Love.
Light of an Unfailing Love. And I'll send out that link again to all you guys. So thanks for listening. And I wish you could all know Christa. That's one of the biggest treats out there. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.